China, home to 1.4 billion people, dominates global headlines every single day. The world's second largest economy. An AI surveillance superpower. A nation with the most advanced facial recognition technology on Earth. Nuclear capabilities that rival any superpower, asterisk. But here's what 99% of people don't realize. China's entire story from its ancient beginning to its ultimate destiny was already written in the Bible thousands of years ago. Asterisk, that's right. China appears throughout Scripture, from the book of Genesis all the way through the apocalyptic prophecies of Revelation. But not under the name China. The Bible calls them the kings of the East, the dragon nation, and the mysterious land of Sinim, asterisk, because the Bible doesn't just reveal China's ancient origins, it prophesies their exact role in the most terrifying chapter of human history, the Battle of Armageddon, where a 200 million strong army will march from the east to fulfill prophecy that was written 2,000 years before China even had 200 million people. Asterisk today. You're about to discover what very few pastors dare to preach and what even fewer scholars are willing to discuss publicly. China's true role in God's master plan from the very beginning to the very end. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you will never look at world news the same way again. Let's start at the very beginning. Genesis chapter 10 gives us the table of nations, the genealogical record of how humanity spread across the earth after Noah's flood. And right there in verse 2, we read about Japheth, one of Noah's 3 sons. Asterisk now. Here's where it gets fascinating. Genesis 10:5 tells us that from Japheth's descendants came the coastland peoples, who were separated into their lands, everyone according to his language. Historical and archaeological evidence shows that Japheth's lineage migrated eastward toward what we now call Asia, asterisk. But here's the part that will blow your mind. Ancient Chinese historical records speak of their earliest ancestor as the Yellow Emperor, who came from the west. Chinese creation accounts remarkably parallel the biblical account of creation, and their earliest religious practices centered around worshiping Shangdi, literally meaning supreme god or heavenly emperor. Asterisk, this isn't coincidence. This is the fingerprint of biblical truth preserved in Chinese culture from the very beginning. The Chinese weren't pagans who later discovered God. They were descendants of Noah who carried the knowledge of the true God with them as they migrated east, asterisk, and then came the Tower of Babel. Genesis 11 records how God confused the languages and scattered the peoples across the earth. This is when the Proto-Chinese peoples would have been definitively separated and began developing their distinct culture, language, and civilization. Asterisk. But God didn't scatter them randomly. He had a plan, a purpose, a destiny for this Eastern nation that wouldn't be fully revealed until thousands of years later in the prophecies of Daniel, Isaiah, and Revelation. The dragon symbol that would become synonymous with Chinese culture, it's about to take on a whole new meaning. Now we fast forward about 1,500 years from Genesis to the prophet Isaiah, around 700 BC, and in Isaiah chapter 49, verse 12, we find one of the most explicit references to China in the entire Bible. Listen to this. Behold, these shall come from afar, and behold, these from the north and from the west, and these from the land of Sinim. Asterisk now. Most English translations just say land of Sinim and move on. But when you dig into the Hebrew, this becomes absolutely explosive. The word Sinim in Hebrew is Sinim. And here's the bombshell. This is the exact root word that gives us Sino, as in Sino-Japanese, Sino-American relations, or the Sinitic language family. Asterisk, in other words, Isaiah is specifically naming China by its ancient designation. This isn't a generic reference to some eastern land. This is a direct, specific prophecy about the people we now call Chinese. And remember, Isaiah wrote this 700 years before Christ, when China was still a collection of warring states that most of the world didn't even know existed. Asterisk, but wait, it gets even more incredible. When the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in 1947, scholars found ancient copies of Isaiah that were 1,000 years older than any previously known manuscripts. And guess what? The word Sinim was right there, exactly as we have it today. This wasn't a later addition or translation error. This was original, inspired prophecy. Asterisk, and the context of this prophecy is mind-blowing. Isaiah 49 is talking about the end times gathering of God's people from every corner of the earth. Verse 11 talks about making mountains into roads and highways being raised up. Verse 12 specifically mentions people coming from Sinim, from China, as part of this great end times movement. Asterisk, think about this. We're living in the first generation in human history where we can actually see people from China from the land of Sinim participating in global Christianity on a massive scale. There are an estimated 150 million Christians in China today. Isaiah's prophecy is being fulfilled in real time, right before our eyes. Now we jump forward to the book of Revelation, chapter 16, verse 12. This is where China's end times role becomes absolutely unmistakable. John writes, "The sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up to prepare the way for the kings from the east." Asterisk, let's break this down geographically. The Euphrates River flows through modern-day Turkey, Syria, and Iraq. It has historically been a natural barrier between the Middle East and Asia. When this river is dried up in the end times, it creates a highway for armies to march from the east toward Israel. Asterisk now, when the Bible says from the east, we need to understand this from Israel's perspective. What's directly east of Israel? You have Jordan and Iraq. But keep going east, and you hit Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, and ultimately China. The largest population center east of Israel is China with its 1.4 billion people. Asterisk, but here's where it gets really specific. The Greek word used here is Anatolian, which doesn't just mean east. It means the rising of the sun, or the Far East. This isn't talking about nearby Eastern countries. This is talking about the distant East, the Orient. And what nation has historically been called the land of the rising sun in Eastern culture? China and its neighbors. The word kings is plural, basileis in Greek. This suggests not just one nation, but multiple rulers or a confederation of Eastern powers. Today, we see exactly this kind of alliance forming with China at the center. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization, BRICS nations, China's Belt and Road Initiative partners. Asterisk, and here's what's absolutely chilling. For 1,900 years after John wrote Revelation, this prophecy seemed impossible. How could armies from China march to the Middle East? The logistics alone would be insurmountable. But today, with modern transportation, missile technology, and China's massive military buildup, this prophecy has become not just possible, but inevitable. Asterisk, China currently has the world's largest standing army with over 2 million active personnel. They're building artificial islands in the South China Sea, expanding their naval capabilities, and developing hypersonic missiles that can reach anywhere on Earth. They're not just preparing for regional conflicts, they're preparing for global power projection. Asterisk, and the timing is perfect. We're seeing the Euphrates River at historically low levels due to drought and dam construction. Turkey and Syria have been building dams that are literally drying up the river. The prophetic highway from the east is being prepared right now, exactly as Revelation predicted. But if Revelation 16 was shocking, wait until you hear Revelation 9:16. John writes, "The number of mounted troops was twice 10,000 times 10,000. I heard their number. Let me do that math for you. twice 10,000 times 10,000 equals 200 million. A 200 million strong army. Asterisk for nearly 2,000 years, Bible scholars struggled with this prophecy. In John's day, the entire population of the Roman Empire was only about 60 million people. The idea of a single army with 200 million soldiers was absolutely inconceivable. Many scholars spiritualized it or said it referred to demons, not human soldiers. Asterisk, but then something changed. In the 20th century, for the first time in human history, it became mathematically possible for a nation to field an army of 200 million. And there's only one country on Earth with the population base to make this happen. China. Asterisk, here are the facts. China currently has a population of 1.4 billion. Roughly half are male, that's 700 million men. Of those, approximately 300 to 400 million are of military age. Even with China's aging population, they still have the largest pool of potential military recruits in human history. Asterisk, but here's where it gets absolutely mind-blowing. In 1998, the U.S. Department of Defense published a report titled "The Security Situation in the Taiwan Strait." In that report, they estimated that China had a pool of approximately 200 million men of military age who could potentially be mobilized for warfare. Asterisk 200 million. The exact number prophesied in Revelation 9:16, written 1,900 years before anyone could have imagined such a massive military force. This isn't close. This is precise. This isn't coincidence. This is prophecy. Asterisk, and China isn't just sitting on this potential, they're actively preparing. They've implemented universal military training, expanded their reserve forces, and created the world's largest militia system. The People's Liberation Army can mobilize civilian populations for military purposes faster than any nation in history. Asterisk, but here's what should really concern us. Revelation 9 describes this army in the context of the sixth trumpet judgment, one of the most devastating judgments in the entire book of Revelation. This isn't just about military might. This is about an army that will be used in God's end times judgment on a rebellious world. And that army is being prepared right now. Now we need to talk about the elephant in the room, or should I say, the dragon in the room. China has always been known as the Dragon Nation. Dragons are everywhere in Chinese culture. Their flag, their art, their architecture, their national identity. But what most people don't realize is how this connects to biblical prophecy. Asterisk. In Chinese culture, dragons are generally seen as positive symbols of power, wisdom, and good fortune. But in biblical prophecy, the dragon represents something very different. Revelation 12:9 identifies the dragon explicitly, and the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. Asterisk now, I'm not saying that Chinese people are evil or that China is inherently satanic, but I am saying that it's remarkable how a nation that identifies itself with dragon imagery is developing the exact kind of control systems that the Bible prophesies will be used by the dragon Satan in the end times. Asterisk, let me show you what I mean. China has implemented something called the social credit system, a comprehensive surveillance and scoring system that monitors every citizen's behavior. They track where you go, what you buy, who you associate with, what you say online, even how you cross the street. Asterisk, based on this monitoring, they assign you a score. If your score is too low, you're placed on a blacklist. And here's where it gets biblical. People on the blacklist are banned from buying plane tickets, train tickets, staying in hotels, getting loans, or even enrolling their children in private schools. They literally cannot buy or sell freely. Asterisk, now listen to Revelation 13:16-17. It causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark, that is, the name of the beast or the number of its name. Asterisk China has already blacklisted over 30 million people from purchasing travel tickets. They've banned millions more from various economic activities. They're not using a physical mark on the hand or forehead. They're using something even more sophisticated: digital surveillance and AI, facial recognition. Asterisk, and here's what's terrifying. Other nations are watching China's system and considering implementing similar programs. What started as a Chinese experiment in social control could become the global template for the mark of the beast system described in Revelation, the dragon. Nation is pioneering the dragon's control system. For over 1,000 years, the ancient Silk Road connected East and West, making China the center of global trade. Merchants, goods, and ideas flowed along these routes, creating unprecedented economic interdependence. But that ancient network was nothing compared to what China is building today. Asterisk, it's called the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI for short. But it's really the new Silk Road, and it's the largest infrastructure project in human history. China is investing over $8 trillion to build roads, railways, ports, and pipelines connecting Asia, Africa, Europe, and even Latin America. Asterisk here are the staggering numbers. 147 countries have signed on to BRI projects. That represents 2/3 of the world's population and 40% of global GDP. China isn't just building infrastructure, they're building economic dependency. Nations that can't repay Chinese loans are forced to hand over strategic assets. Asterisk 3. Lanka couldn't repay its debt for the Hambantota port, so China took it over on a 99-year lease. Pakistan owes China over $60 billion for the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Djibouti, Kenya, Laos, the list goes on. China is using debt to gain control of critical infrastructure worldwide. Asterisk now. Let me read you something from Revelation 18:11-13, describing the fall of economic Babylon. And the merchants of the earth weep and mourn for her, since no one buys their cargo anymore, cargo of gold, silver, jewels, pearls, fine linen, purple cloth, silk, scarlet cloth, all kinds of scented wood, all kinds of articles of ivory. Asterisk. This passage describes a global economic system so dominant that when it collapses, merchants worldwide mourn because no one buys their cargo anymore. For most of history, no single nation could create this kind of global economic dependency. But today, China's BRI is creating exactly this scenario. Asterisk. China is now the largest trading partner for over 120 countries. They're the world's largest manufacturer, the largest exporter, and increasingly, the largest creditor. If China's economy collapsed tomorrow, it would trigger a global economic catastrophe that would make 2008 look like a minor recession. Asterisk. And here's the prophetic connection. Revelation 18 describes Babylon's fall happening in 1 hour, suggesting a sudden catastrophic collapse of this global economic system. With today's interconnected digital markets, a major economic collapse can literally happen in 1 hour. China is building the very system that Revelation prophesies will one day fall. But here's where the story takes an incredible turn. In the midst of China's rise as a global superpower and their implementation of unprecedented control systems, something miraculous is happening: the explosive growth of Christianity in China. Asterisk conservative estimates put the number of Christians in China at 150 million more than the entire population of Russia. Some estimates go as high as 200 million. That would make China home to more Christians than any other country in the world, including the United States. Asterisk. Most of these Christians worship in underground house churches, meeting in secret to avoid government persecution. They can't build visible church buildings or advertise their meetings. They face constant surveillance, harassment, and imprisonment. Yet they continue to grow at an unprecedented rate. Asterisk. In 2012 alone, Chinese authorities investigated over 12,000 individuals for illegal religious activities. They've demolished church buildings, removed crosses from buildings, and implemented Sinicization campaigns to force churches to conform to Communist Party ideology. The persecution is real, and it's intensifying. Asterisk, but here's what's prophetically significant. Jesus said in Matthew 24:14, "And this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations. And then the end will come, for the Great Commission to be fulfilled. The gospel must reach every nation, including China." Asterisk, the fact that Christianity is exploding in China, despite intense persecution, is one of the clearest signs that we're living in the end times. These Chinese believers are fulfilling the Great Commission from within the dragon's own territory. They're proving that no government, no matter how powerful, can stop the advance of God's kingdom. All of this China's rise, their military buildup, their economic dominance, their control systems, all of it is leading to one final climactic moment described in the Bible, the Battle of Armageddon. Asterisk, Daniel 11:44 gives us a crucial detail about the end times. "But news from the east and the north shall alarm him, and he shall go out with great fury to destroy and devote many to destruction." The him here refers to the Antichrist, the final world ruler. And what alarms him? News from the east. Asterisk, this suggests that China and the Eastern powers won't be allies of the Antichrist, they'll be his rivals. When the kings of the East march toward Israel, it won't be to support the Antichrist's regime. It will be to challenge it. This sets up the final confrontation at Armageddon. Asterisk. But here's how the story ends. Revelation 19:19-21 describes Christ's return to earth just as all these armies are gathered for battle. "And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth with their armies gathered to make war against him who was sitting on the horse and against his army. And the beast was captured, and they were thrown alive into the lake of fire." Asterisk, China's ultimate destiny isn't to rule the world. It's to be defeated by the King of Kings and Lord of Lords when Jesus Christ returns to establish his kingdom on earth. All the military might, all the economic power, all the surveillance technology, none of it will matter when the true king returns. We are living in the most prophetically significant time in human history. China's rise isn't an accident, it's the fulfillment of biblical prophecy written thousands of years ago. Asterisk, from the land of Sinim and Isaiah to the kings of the East in Revelation, from the 200 million strong army to the dragon's control systems, from the new Silk Road to the underground church, every piece of the prophetic puzzle is falling into place. Asterisk, the question isn't whether these prophecies will be fulfilled, they're being fulfilled right now, before our eyes. The question is, are you ready for what comes next? Asterisk, if this video has opened your eyes to the times we're living in, share it with everyone you know. Subscribe to this channel for more prophetic insights. And most importantly, make sure you're ready for the return of Jesus Christ. Because according to biblical prophecy, he's coming soon.